Good evening. Welcome to the Wellness Team Call. It is Tuesday, the 9th day of April, 2024, and we're excited to hear from Dr. Jeremy Thornton. I want to make sure that he gets to be recognized the proper way. He has got a great history. He has got literally 25 plus years of experience working with what we do in the industry. He's got background nutritional and functional medicine for more than 25 years. He's an internist, he's a chiropractic physician, and a clinical nutritionist. I would say just as important and as fun as that is he's been with Vitify for over 2 years. Is that right, Dr. J?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And we're thrilled to have him on our call here. One of the hallmarks that we have with Vitify is to have phenomenal information readily available, readily consumable, and also repeatable. So we're not going to get a science lecture. We're going to get practical use, practical information to find out what it is about curcumin, about Vitify products, about all the things that we're excited about, and maybe we don't always understand exactly how to share them or to make them available and known to everybody else. Dr. Jeremy Thornton is here to give us kind of a guided tour into some of the great parts. And tonight is a great topic. It's blood sugar and curcumin. I think in the promo, I said curcumin versus blood sugar, like battle royale coming to a head. Let's hear about it from Dr. Jeremy. So we'll turn it over to him right now. Dr. J, take it away.
Hey, guys. Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see everybody. We always have to share this important information to start things when we're talking about important health topics, when we're talking about natural medicine, that the following information is not intended to replace professional medical recommendations. It's for informational and educational purposes based on preventative medicine. If you have any of the following symptoms, you should consult a licensed healthcare professional for the diagnosis and treatment of any medical condition. All right, everybody solemnly swear those things. All right. We're going to focus mostly tonight on diabetes. There's a lot of different areas of blood sugar imbalance, but of course, by far, this is the biggest thing that we experience, especially here in the United States. So I think that KFC needs to work on their marketing because you can get this 96-ounce mega jug of Pepsi for only $2.99, and KFC will donate $1 to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. Help us find a cure. All right, well, the cure, first of all, would be not to drink 96 ounces of Pepsi, right? Can we get an amen on that? But we're going to talk about that there's two main types of diabetes, and I'm actually going to talk about a third. We're now recognizing type 3 diabetes, but type 1 and type 2, right? Type 1 is related to an autoimmune situation. If you didn't know that, the immune system gets confused and attacks the insulin secreting cells in the pancreas, and then the pancreas cannot secrete insulin very well, and then sometimes eventually not at all. They call that insulin dependent. Okay, type 2 is lifestyle related, right? It is the body cannot properly process blood sugar because there's insulin resistance, okay? Generally, type 1 occurs between birth and 40 years of age, usually youth, diagnosis pretty early. Usually onset with type 2 is 40 plus. However, that age is dramatically reducing. We're getting younger and younger. It's not unusual for me to see somebody in their teens, 20s, 30s that have either pre-diabetes or diabetes already. And I see this alarmingly often. And so diabetes itself is the 7th leading cause of death in the US. That's startling. And I would argue that these figures are a little bit skewed because diabetes is tied to so many other health conditions, right? It is so hard. Diabetes is so hard on the vascular system. It's so hard on the brain, right? It's so hard on the immune system. So guess what? Many people that die of heart disease have what? They have diabetes, right? Many people that have cancer, many people that have Alzheimer's disease also have diabetes, and it's connected to these. And we'll talk a little bit about that connection in just a minute. So in the US, people with diabetes total 37.3 million, which is 11.3% of the population in the United States. And 23% of those are undiagnosed. They don't know that they have it. Pre-diabetes, 96 million people, 18 and older. That's 38% of the adult US population. So almost 1 in 4 people have pre-diabetes. 65 years or older, that jumps up to almost 50% have pre-diabetes. These statistics are quite alarming, and it's getting worse, sadly. By 2030, it's estimated in the US to be 15%, over 15% will have diabetes. That's what's projected. And it's not just, of course, the US. I think we might have a jump on a lot of countries because of our lifestyle and our Western habits, which are always good. And this is expected between 2019 and 2045 to have a 51% increase in prevalence worldwide. And of course, depending on what country you live in, you're going to have a lot bigger increase, right? And why is that? Why do we have here in North America not as quite a big of increase? Because we're already there. We're already fat and we're already diabetic. So, the rest of the world has a little bit of the catching up to do if they adopt some of our poor eating habits. And sadly, that's what's happening. At a tune of $327 billion in medical costs here in the US. 237 billion direct medical costs, 90 billion from reduced productivity, right? So people that have diabetes and its related complications often cannot work efficiently, right, at their jobs anymore or their careers anymore. And that comes with quite a burden. So when we talk about diabetes, one thing to remember is high blood sugar and high insulin are very hard on the body. Okay, very hard on the systems of the body, both microvasculature and macrovasculature. And what's that mean? The tiny blood vessels, for example, in the eye, are easily damaged by high blood sugar, right? So we hear a lot of people that have diabetes have eye problems, right? Glaucoma and cataracts and retinopathy. They have kidney issues, okay? Commonly impacts those blood vessels in the kidneys, leading to kidney disease. They oftentimes have nerve problems, right? And neuropathies. That high blood sugar damages the nerves in our peripheral nervous system. So they have numbness, right, in their extremities, especially in their lower extremities and their feet. But also larger blood vessels in the brain. We have increased risk of stroke and cerebrovascular disease, TIAs, cognitive decline and impairment, heart disease, high blood pressure, increases risk of coronary heart disease. In the extremities, not only do we have neuropathy, but we also have vascular changes. Peripheral vascular disease are sometimes called PAD, peripheral artery disease, because of those narrowed blood vessels, those inflamed blood vessels, reducing circulation to the feet especially. Now, what's type 3 diabetes? This is now called what they're calling Alzheimer's disease, right? Is type 3 diabetes. Why? Because in Alzheimer's disease, many times, not always, but many times, it's connected to blood sugar imbalance, insulin resistance, but insulin resistance of the brain cells, right? And if our cells cannot get glucose, our cells use glucose to make energy, right? And if our brain cells cannot get glucose, we're going to have cellular damage and even cell death. Not to mention that it creates a high amount of inflammation in the brain itself, and that leads to other complications as well. So now they're calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. All right. So I often hear this, well, my parents have diabetes, or my grandparents have diabetes. I'm likely going to have blood sugar problems. Or if I do have diabetes, I blame it on my parents or my grandparents, right? Because they had diabetes. That's not entirely true. And I often use the phrase that genetics may load the gun, but in diabetes especially, it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger, right? Type 2 diabetes, I'm talking to especially here. We might have this in our genes. That does not mean it's going to express itself. And especially if we know we have that tendency, we can make lifestyle decisions to prevent that from happening. Does that make sense? So type 2 diabetes is really a lifestyle disease. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease. Type 2 is a lifestyle disease. Our food choices can either prevent or promote disease, of course. So insulin resistance, this is a good picture of insulin resistance. The insulin is saying, please take the sugar. And our cells are saying, nope, right? That's exactly what insulin resistance is. And so if you think about it, right, if we eat sugar, we eat something that converts rapidly to sugar, our blood sugar rises, right? This is natural. This is what happens. The pancreas, it's over here on the left side, says, oh, there's too much sugar in the bloodstream. I better get busy. So it produces insulin, right? Pancreas produces insulin. Insulin has the key to open our cells, okay? So insulin goes and unlocks the cells. The sugar comes out of the bloodstream and into our cells, our organs, our muscles, our tissues, right? Comes into the cells, and then our cells are able to use that glucose to make energy. And that's the way the process is supposed to work. So what happens with insulin resistance? Well, we tend to drive this blood sugar muscle a little bit too hard, right? It's very easy to do. Our lifestyle choices, our diet, we like our sugar. We like our grains and our breads and our pastas and our starches. We like these types of foods. It drives this insulin and this blood sugar machine awful hard, right? And so now we're driving blood sugar up. Pancreas is releasing insulin. It clears the blood sugar. We're eating more. The sugar goes up. The pancreas secretes insulin. And after a while, our cells are like, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? The cells are like, oh, whoopee, big deal, more insulin, right? And they're not paying attention to that insulin as much anymore. Okay. And so now the pancreas says, well, that's not working very well. Maybe I just need to secrete more insulin. So the pancreas thinks it needs to yell louder for our cells to listen. So it secretes a little bit more insulin. And for a while, that does get the sugar under control, keeps everything okay. But of course, over time, we keep driving that blood sugar muscle. The cells become a little more resistant. The cells become a little bit more resistant, requiring a little more insulin, a little bit more insulin. And this is what happens when we get stuck in this realm of insulin resistance. So people can get into this area for years before they might ever cross over and into having pre-diabetes or diabetes. And we're going to talk about ways that you can, even in your own life, catch this early if this is happening, and ways we're going to talk about to help reduce the likelihood of this progressing. So anybody that is diabetic once was insulin resistant. Okay. And the only difference is with diabetes is with insulin resistance, finally the resistance gets so strong by those cells, right? They're just not having it anymore. No matter how high that insulin is, they ain't having it. Okay. So now the blood sugar, which once was overcome by that high insulin level, is now rising, even though there's plenty of insulin around. Blood sugar just starts to creep up and creep up and creep up and creep up. And there's nothing the pancreas can do about it. No matter how much it cranks out, it's not working. Too much insulin resistance. Now we creep into diabetes or pre-diabetes, and eventually we can creep into diabetes. So again, everybody that's diabetic once was insulin resistant, but that does not mean that everybody that's insulin resistant will go on to develop diabetes, right? We have a choice and we can reverse this train. So insulin resistance, we eat unhealthy carbs, insulin is released, cells become resistant, sugar stores as fat, we feel hangry, right? That's both hungry and angry at the same time, hangry and lethargic. And then we eat more carbs because we're tired and we want to pick up, right? And so we have this vicious circle of insulin resistance. And so ways that we can measure this, I'm going to encourage you to look into this in your own health if you haven't already. The typical tests are this A1C test, right? They're able with this test to look inside our red blood cell. They are able to measure the glucose that's inside there and tell what our blood sugar is on average over about a 3-month period of time, because that's how long that red blood cell lives, right? And so from that, they can say, okay, this average blood sugar over this last 3-month period of time is right about here. And so if we are between a 5.7 and a 6.4, that's called pre-diabetes. If we are at 6.5 or above, that is diabetes, okay? They can measure our fasting glucose. What is our sugar at that moment when they draw our blood? This is the pre-diabetic range. This is the diabetic range. All right. Thankfully, they don't do this test as much anymore. It's called a glucose tolerance test. It's really, let's see how much sugar we can cram in this sugary drink mixture and have the person drink it and see what happens. Does that sound like fun? And then we just measure the blood sugar and see how crazy it gets. And then if it's over 200, this person is diabetic. That sounds like a horrible idea to figure out if somebody's diabetic or not. What I would suggest that is the most sensitive that will show up before any of these will is your fasting insulin. Okay, so fasting insulin way before blood sugar starts to get out of control, way before we get into pre-diabetic range, our fasting insulin is going to creep up. Medically speaking, over 19 is considered insulin resistance, or is considered elevated, okay? Optimally, we should be even much lower than that. But if we creep over 19, that's called insulin resistance, and we are well on our way to prediabetes if we do not make some changes. The other thing that will often change way before these over here change is your triglycerides will start to creep up, okay? Anything over 150 is elevated. Here's our optimal range. But so insulin triglycerides will often start to creep up even before our blood sugar is really getting out of hand. And so checking these markers is very valuable because we can catch a lot of this stuff very early, and we can reverse this from becoming a chronic health condition and all of the other many unfortunate things that can come with it. So of course, we have to talk about curcumin, right? This is by far my favorite tool working with blood sugar imbalance. I'm going to share exactly why that is. And this is just a handful of the ways that is in the medical literature. These aren't things that I made up. In the medical literature that curcumin can
darling.
do.
That's why I put it in there.
Oh, somebody
Can
mute.
you remove all that? It's so confusing.
I hope it wasn't me that's confusing. But anyway, the curcumin, it increases insulin sensitivity, right? We talked about those cells being insulin resistant. They're not listening to the insulin anymore. Guess what? Curcumin helps that cell to become responsive once again to the insulin that's being produced. It lowers blood glucose and improves lipid levels. It improves pancreatic beta cell function. So the pancreas has these beta cells that produce the insulin, right? And it helps those cells to function more efficiently. Improves kidney and liver function. It lowers lipid peroxidation, and all this is the early stages of developing plaque in the arteries. It helps with that. It reduces oxidative stress, right? We talk about the antioxidant properties of curcumin. We've mentioned that many times. It reduces that oxidative stress, which is very hard on our cells and our tissues. And of course, it decreases inflammation. We're well aware of that. It increases mitochondrial biogenesis. I like that word. It sounds important. It makes me sound smart. But really all that means is that we're increasing the number of mitochondrial, right? Genesis, we're creating more mitochondria. That's our energy, right? That's the powerhouse of the cell. If we have more mitochondrial, we're going to become more cellular efficient, more metabolically flexible, they like to call that. We're going to have increased muscle and fat glucose uptake, increased uptake in the muscle of glucose. And so those are the things that we do know about curcumin in the medical literature. Just going to share a few studies because I think it's powerful to see what the literature says. And I encourage you, if you're a nerd like I am, to go to pubmed.gov and just type in curcumin and diabetes or any health condition you're curious about. But you're going to see a lot of really great research in these areas. So this one is called Curcumin, a natural product for diabetes and its complications. The anti-diabetic activity of curcumin may be due to its potent ability to suppress oxidative stress, which we just talked about, and inflammation. Moreover, it shows a beneficial role on the diabetes-induced endothelial dysfunction. So we talked about that, that lipid peroxidation, which is what starts to happen inside our arteries. The artery starts to become inflamed, it starts to become dysfunctional, and over time, that can create hardening of the arteries, can create plaquing in the arteries, and head us down the wrong direction as far as cardiovascular disease. This helps diabetes-induced, basically, blood vessel dysfunction, and induces a downregulation of nuclear factor kappa B. Basically, that is an inflammatory cytokine that creates a lot of inflammation and problems in different inflammatory conditions, and downregulate it, it kind of squashes that inflammatory marker that is related to diabetes. Curcumin also reduces blood glucose, awesome, and the levels of glycosylated hemoglobin. So that's the hemoglobin A1C. It reduces that test, that A1C test. So that's what this study talked about. Curcumin extract for prevention of type 2 diabetes. This one is awesome. So what they did is they took a group of folks that were pre-diabetic. Okay, they weren't diabetic yet, they were pre-diabetic, and they gave some curcumin and they gave some a placebo. Okay, after 9 months, they go back and they check these two groups that were pre-diabetic when they started this, right? 9 months later, they're checking them. Of the subjects that were in the placebo group, 16.4% had already went on to develop diabetes. In 9 months, the pre-diabetic subjects, 16.4% went on to develop diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Guess how many in the curcumin-treated group went on to develop diabetes? 0 in those 9 months. In addition, the curcumin-treated group showed a better overall function of the beta cells. Again, those are the pancreas, the insulin-secreting cells in the pancreas. All right, I've got to kind of move you folks around on my screen here. Curcumin ameliorates autoimmune diabetes. So this is kind of talking more about our type 1 diabetes, right? Where the immune system attacks the cells in the pancreas that secrete insulin. And this was a mouse study. And the curcumin treatment led to a significant delay of disease onset. So they were trying to create type 1 diabetes in these mice. The curcumin treatment delayed onset of the disease, and in some instances prevented autoimmune diabetes by inhibiting the immune system basically from infiltrating those cells, and it preserved the insulin expressing cells in the pancreas. So it protected those cells from the immune system harm that would generally cause that. These findings reveal an effective therapeutic effect of curcumin in autoimmune diabetes by its actions on key immune cells responsible for beta cell death, right? Those immune system attacks those and destroys those insulin secreting cells in type 1 diabetes. This is talking about the effects of curcumin on hemoglobin A1C and fasting blood glucose, the lipid profile in diabetic subjects. In this nanocurcumin group, a significant decrease was found in the hemoglobin A1C. We talked about that, the fasting blood glucose, the triglycerides, right? And even overall body fat, right? Our body mass index was improved in these subjects, in these diabetic subjects. Curcumin supplementation reduced the severity of diabetic sensory motor polyneuropathy. So we hear about people with diabetes developing neuropathy, right? And how that impacts the extremities. And we have numbness and some lose sensation in their feet, right? Have you heard of folks doing that? Whoops, I jumped ahead there. Okay, so the curcumin supplementation accounted for a significant reduction in A1C, again, fasting blood sugar, total score of neuropathy, total reflex score, and temperature scores were all improved in the neuropathy folks that used the curcumin. All right, this was in curcumin in pancreatic islets regeneration in type 1 diabetes. This is another rat study. And the interesting thing here is they were creating autoimmune disease in these rats. So the immune system was attacking the beta cells in the pancreas. And so those that know about type 1 diabetes, those cells don't come back, right? That once they're destroyed by the immune system, they can't produce insulin anymore, right? In these cells because they're damaged, they're destroyed by the vicious attack of the immune system on those cells in the pancreas. These rats that were using the curcumin in started to grow new pancreas cells. They revealed, initially they had absence of the islets of Langerhans cells. After 5 and 10 months from the onset of diabetes, the rat pancreas showed well-developed, larger size islets. These are the cells that secrete insulin. So we don't know what this is going to mean in human studies, right? This is very early, but in rat studies where the immune system attacked and destroyed these cells in the pancreas, the curcumin-treated rats started regrowing these insulin-secreting cells. And that's something I've just never heard before, right? We never had thought that this could happen. The cells, once they're gone, they're gone. This study is suggesting that, at least in rats, that these cells can be regrown again. So this is just amazing, exciting stuff. There's always got to be a but, right? We've got when we talk about something that's so exciting and so monumental in its applications to health, there's got to be a catch. And the catch, which some of you may already know, is all around bioavailability, right? This is the hidden secret that we talk about with curcumin and turmeric is it's very poorly bioavailable, right? Orally, it's very little ever gets through the digestive system, even less ever makes it into the bloodstream, into our cells and our organs and our tissues. So the percent that ever goes through the intestinal border once we consume turmeric, standard turmeric or curcumin, is less than 10%. And some would argue it's much less than that. In the literature is full of articles like this. If you go start to look at curcumin in the literature, article after article after article talk about this problem of curcumin and its bioavailability. Okay, you'll see it over and over and over again. And just imagine this: over the decades that they've been studying curcumin, of course, we have history of human use for over 4,000 years, right? Some of the earliest forms of medicine were using curcumin. But as we've studied curcumin, of course. And they started using curcumin in the laboratory, and they were using curcumin in these cell cultures, and they were studying it. It was doing all of these amazing things for these chronic health conditions, right? Some of the worst diseases you can think of in the lab, they were seeing these monumental changes in the situation. Well, then, of course, they decided, okay, now let's start doing human studies, right? The animals survived. This literally looked cool in the lab. Let's start doing human studies. Well, guess what? It wasn't working, right? And in many times they couldn't even find the curcumin in the bloodstream when they had orally given this to the human patient, right? Or the human study after consuming it, right? And so can you imagine the frustration of a scientist? You know this stuff is almost magical, but you can't get it into the human body at levels that mean anything, right? And so this article goes on. I didn't highlight this part. I should have. Said some researchers have argued that given its unstable, reactive, and non-bioavailable nature, further clinical trials on curcumin are unwarranted. So some scientists are saying, why are we even studying this stuff anymore? Yes, it's cool. It does all this awesome things. We can't absorb it, right? Curcumin has been confirmed to exhibit very poor bioavailability, with studies showing very low or even undetectable concentrations in the blood and extraintestinal tissues. Major reasons are due to its poor absorption, rapid metabolism, chemical instability, and rapid systemic elimination. All right. And so that's the struggle, right? That's the hidden secret. That's the but, right? When we're talking about all of these things, right? Until now. This is why many of us are here. Many of us are excited about this BioMS technology because it changes everything we thought we knew about curcumin and its application in the human body, right? This multi-patented technology, which began at the University of Hohenheim in Germany, has come up with a way to increase curcumin bioavailability by up to 277 times, okay? And this is what the curcumin looks on the inside, this little nanoparticle surrounded by a micelle structure, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that, is what makes this magic happen. So this little bottle right here is the powerhouse that we're talking about, up to 277 times more bioavailable than standard turmeric or curcumin preparations. And really, it's three technologies in one, right? Because curcumin comes from turmeric, but it's only about 3 to 5% makeup of the turmeric root. There's only a little bit of curcumin in there. So they extract that curcumin portion, right? They apply a nanotechnology, which means they simply shrink those particle sizes to very tiny levels. Then these are still, they often call curcumin and turmeric lipophilic, meaning it loves fat, but hydrophobic, meaning it fears water. We're trying to get it into the body that's mostly made of what? Mostly made of water, right? These could have a problem. So they then wrapped these hydrophobic particles in a micelle structure that's easily able, like a little submarine, is easily able to carry that curcumin to the intestinal lining and able to deliver it directly into the bloodstream and able to go easily into our tissues and into our cells with this technology. So how small these particle sizes we're talking about with our nanocurcumin, less than 30 nanometers, how small is that? Well, a red blood cell is 7,000 nanometers wide. Can you even imagine that? A human hair is 100,000 nanometers wide. And we're talking about particle sizes less than 30 nanometers. And this is, of course, one of the special things that makes this amazing substance that we've studied for hundreds of years finally able to be utilized in ways that can significantly impact human health. So when we talk about this, this is just a great visual. What they studied, giving humans in the study 2,000 milligrams of curcumin, and they monitored the blood levels over hours. And guess what? You might have to scooch in a little closer to see it, but ta-da, there's the peak. All right. Can we get an ovation for that? Well, not really, because that's not very exciting, is it? And that's exactly what the scientists probably thought as they're studying this. Where's the curcumin? Okay, we gave 2,000 milligrams of this stuff, and we can't even see it. Well, it peaked at an hour, but guess where it's at by 2 hours? It's gone. Can't find it. It's like it never even was there. And as you can see, this is some of the frustration and the limitations that we've had with curcumin and turmeric over the years, right? This is what we're able to do now, okay? You can't see it come off of the baseline, but they're still studying traditional curcumin. It's down here somewhere. But these are levels that we're reaching with our BioMS technology. This is both men and women studies. We're reaching levels in the bloodstream we've never even come close to before. I don't care what type of thing, whether you try to add black pepper to it, you try to use these, what do they call them? Lipid liposomes. There's a lot of new things on the market, but still nothing is reaching blood levels like this. And what's most exciting, not only are we reaching levels in the bloodstream we never thought possible, but look at the time. Remember before it was gone in 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, we still have measurable amounts of curcumin in the bloodstream. And that is amazing and so very exciting that from a single dose, we're able to achieve a 10-drop dose of our BioMS. We're able to achieve levels like this and over this period of time. It's almost unfathomable what we're seeing. And I like this quote. It's not about how much curcumin you take, right? People are taking thousands of milligrams, but how much is absorbed, how long it stays in your bloodstream, in your organs and your tissues, right? That's what matters. And that's what makes this technology special. I'm just going to close with just a patient of mine, just to give you a little bit of information. I love looking at blood work and changes and how this is impacting people. This 56-year-old male patient with diabetes and increased lipids and rheumatoid arthritis. I won't dive into all the details. It'll probably put everybody to sleep. But blood glucose over this period of time, with the only change here was our BioMS. Fasting blood sugar dropped from a 142 to a 101. The A1C dropped from a 7.4, which is in the diabetic range, down to a 5.6, which is actually just one step below the pre-diabetic range. The cholesterol total, you can see how that dropped. Triglycerides plummeted. LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, the so-called good cholesterol, right, actually improved a little bit. But look at these inflammatory markers down here. Both of these are markers for inflammation in the body. And look how they dropped when using our amazing technology. So anyway, guys, I flew through some of that, but I hope that it was educational. I hope that it was helpful to really just get a feel for not only how important blood sugar problems is blood sugar balance is to our health, but how we can, with our lifestyle changes, can turn the tide of this, right? In our own health, we can encourage our family members and our friends to really take notice of their health, not blaming it on our genes, right? It's lifestyle that pulls that trigger. And in some may decide to use our amazing BioMS curcumin to be an aid, right? Not a cure, but an aid in improving their health and longevity. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dave.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Jeremy. Great information. I look back and I thought, why couldn't he have been one of my professors in biology or science or nutrition? Because I can understand it when you talk. Maybe there's also something about watching it or listening to it, a dozen times, or I'm at the age and the body type where these things have much more importance to me than they did 50, 40 years ago. But Dr. Jeremy Thornton, thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your willingness to share it with the world. And also thank you for your time tonight. This has been a great share of information. We want to thank everyone who's on. I know people are on who are preparing for the Life Converted trip. calling in from parts of Europe in preparation for that trip. We've had people say they're getting up early in the UK and in Amsterdam and in Copenhagen, and someone is in New Zealand. I think it's mid-afternoon or early morning or late morning there. But wherever you are, wherever you decided to join us from today, we're thankful for you, for your energy, for your interest in these great topics that really can have a great effect on people around the world. So again, for Dr. Jeremy and for the whole team, thanks everybody. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night, and we will look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Bye-bye.